mixed methods. Then after that, the name of your supervisor, and then the word count. Clearly, this is going to be the last page that you do because you won't know your word count until you've actually finished all your work. So once again, the title, which is just the research question in step 1, the student number, and then whether your research proposal is qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, the name of your supervisor, and the word count. After that, we then come to the literature review section. Now, this section is obviously split into these 4 parts. The first part being your introduction and background, which is estimated at around 400 words. Now, please remember, these are suggested. And the suggestion is pretty much a reasonable suggestion because we want you to actually ease your reader into your assignment. Help them to understand the importance, the context, and everything to do with the topic you're about to go into. And then lay the foundations for why it is important and why it is going to be helping you to come into, your PICO element and how you're going to do your literature selection and identification process. And again, this will then link also to your appendices that come later when it comes to your search strategy and Prisma. So 400 words suggested for that. So please make sure that you're signposting your reader to the appendices that are relating to the literature selection and identification. And then also make sure that you're giving us enough detail to be able to replicate what you've done. And that also includes you obviously rewatching or re-going through the videos that have been put on the module pages that relate to this section as well. The next section is your critical appraisal. So here you're going to be critically appraising the 3 pieces of literature that you've chosen after you've gone through your literature selection and identification process. Now, these 3 pieces of literature will be your best available evidence, and you're going to be critiquing them on 2 levels. First of all, how good are these pieces of literature representing the type of research they're talking about? How good was the research done in terms of your critical appraisal and you using your critical appraisal tools? And the second level is you're critiquing the literature in terms of how well does it answer your question. Now, remembering that you're going to come into one of 3 areas. Either the literature is answering your question completely, either the literature is answering your question partially, or your literature is answering your question not at all. And that's all to do with depending on what you found, right? Depending on your topics. So some topics are completely new. And so what you did was your best available evidence talked about something similar or close to. And so you'd have to be thinking about, okay, what does that mean for practice? Okay. So these implications for practice will fall into, 3 areas that you're thinking about. What does this mean after you've done your critical review? What is the information that you've learned? What does it mean in terms of future research? What does it mean in terms of clinical practice? And in fact, what does it also mean in terms of education for clinicians? Okay. And this implication for practice is also a very important section because you're also thinking about wide reading, right? As you think about the pieces of literature that you've critiqued and other, material that is out there depending on your topic, what exactly does it mean? So what, right? After you've critiqued this literature, what does it mean for your practice? And also you notice this is also a good section where as you're thinking about your implications for practice and conclusions, how does this lay the foundation for your research proposal, right? For example, and remember, this is just an example. For example, if your research question has been answered by the literature that you found, you may choose to still maintain your research question and propose another study almost similar to what you have reviewed. And that's because you just want to further the knowledge in that area. Or you could choose to focus on the same topic, but a different strand of the topic, something that you think, as I was reading the literature that I critiqued, they were recommending future research in the same topic, but maybe focusing on this angle. And so you can actually maybe propose studies or propose research based on whatever recommendations are in that literature. If your question was answered 50-50 or partially, then you could actually be proposing maybe something linked to what was not answered. And if your literature did not answer any of your questions, then you're probably maintaining your same research question and actually proposing research that answers the question that wasn't answered. After all this, it then moves us into your abstract. And in your abstract, which is a maximum of 200 words, you then help us to understand what's about to come next, which is a research proposal. So it's just a summary, a nice easing in for your reader about what's coming next in terms of your research proposal. Then in this context, please then give us your study aim, which is pegged at about 100 words. And then your methodology, which is going to be something quite detailed, right? How are you going to do what you're going to do? What other things are you going to be thinking about in terms of recruitment, in terms of sampling, in terms of analysis, and even in terms of ethics. And then obviously, then move into the limitations and implications of your study, okay? What will this study mean to the research world, and what will be the limitations of the study? What can we not use the results for example, right? And remember, we discussed that in every study that you will ever do, there will always be limitations, either because of the research design or because of the focus that you have or because of different other things that you can think of. So be really thoughtful about the limitations, and also, what does it mean? What benefits will it benefit when you've done this study? How will it actually affect or improve practice? And then finally, think about your dissemination strategy. When your study is complete, how will you make sure the people who need to hear about it know about it? What methods are you going to use? Who are even the people that you're targeting? So things like that, think about that. And then please remember your appendices. These are compulsory appendices, which are those: your search strategy and Prisma flow diagram, your Gantt chart, and your consent form. The thing that is optional is your patient information sheet. And then when it comes to references, we're only looking for 40 to 50 references. That is to say that the minimum amount of references you should have is 40 minimum, and the maximum is 50. That's maximum. And then all your tables which will not affect your word count should not exceed 250 words. That's all your tables. Any tables that you use in your assignment should not exceed 250 words. And then above all else, please remember to make sure that your assignment meets the learning outcomes, okay? And there's only 5 of them. And you will notice that some of these outcomes will be met automatically as you are doing the work, while others you actually have to be really thoughtful about: where in my assignment have I met this learning outcome? Where have I talked about things like, critically analyzing the role of research in the shaping of health care policy and guidelines? Think about that carefully. And you'll be aware that in week 6, for example, I gave you an exercise where you can map these learning outcomes to see and think about where you will address them. And also the same exercise will be repeated in week 8, where I actively remind you to make sure that you've considered where you are mapping your learning outcomes. So that's it to do when it comes to the assignment itself. So as you scroll down the assessment brief, okay, and this is now me going to the next pages, you notice you've got your marking criteria, which is there as well, and then specific guidance to the different sections of the assignment. So please take time to read this, because obviously